Hello, everyone, and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea, and today we'll be sharing with you more of the information I received from the 25th dimension. I will be reading from a transcript of the session, and when I refer to Lorrayne, I'm speaking of my practitioner who's asking questions I prepared in advance of the session, unless she has her own questions, and she will say so when she does. Otherwise, when I refer to me, I'm speaking of myself under hypnosis, which means the answers are coming from the 25th. As you know, I've taken a bit of a hiatus. In fact, this session was done on August 10th of this year. So it's been a few months. I have been very busy from a 3D perspective, but truly, I also needed an emotional break because, as you all know, we have gone through a lot. We've been doing a lot of work in the background, and sometimes consciously. We have integrated a lot in the last couple of years since the 25th started talking to us. They started talking, or I started having QHHT sessions in August of 2021, actually. So the session kind of marks the 2-year anniversary, even though I started releasing them on YouTube in December 2021. We have gone through a lot in this period of time, and I know we've had our ups and downs, mostly downs, I'm sure, if we really are honest about it, because this has been very emotional, but it has also been worth it, because when I look back, and I hope you feel the same way, when I look back at the evolution we have had in our way of seeing things, it has allowed us to at least have a degree of calm in the madness of everything that's taking place in this world. And so at least we have some understanding as to why things are happening, and we have things that we can look forward to. So that does a lot for me, as I hope it does for you. All right, I am going to start reading here. So this is the very first part after Lorrayne is done doing her induction, and she says, well, we have a lot of questions, and we've been conversing quite a bit before the session, as we usually do. We catch up and we just talk about our own personal stuff. And so she asks, is there anything that you would like to say to us before we get into our questions? And normally here, the 25th, we'll have an initial message, or I will have a vision of something that they want me to see. And so here we are. Here's the 25th. We hear your frustration. We understand your frustration, because you're split between the fact that you are now very well aware that you are barely even here anymore. And the question, as Clea put it, then is, why do I have to come back here at any time at that point if I'm gone most of the time? I'm leaving my NPC to fend. That's the word she uses when she thinks about this concept, to fend with reality on its own. So what is the point? What is the difference between my NPC and everybody else's NPC? In fact, she laughs about the fact that the true NPCs, the ones that have no essence coming back to them, they behave better. They're better behaved. They're our own NPC while it's here by itself. So we understand and we realize, we are now aware, and we are now very much often taking, even at 3D level, taking the view of the higher self. So we can't blame our higher self for making the choice of not being here very much. Again, because we, as being the ones who not only are completed, but are aware of being completed, really have no interest. And you were just mentioning this, in keeping the shell in place, even in being in the shell. However, and this answers your questions that you had about then, why are we still here? Is it just because we promised each other 300 years ago that we go together and all of a sudden we are stuck? That's the word we keep using. We're stuck. Why? Why do we have to do this when there are people that choose to continue resisting? Again, for their reasons. There is, as you well know by now, there is absolutely no judgment on anybody's way of playing this game or making choices that have to do with their own experience. But of course, the question in your mind, Lorrayne, and on Clea's mind is, but why do we have to suffer? Why do we have to sacrifice? These are all the words that you were just using prior to us starting the session. We did decide we would go together, and not only because of an old promise that we made that seems almost irrelevant now, and it's like, why do we keep it? Why don't we just break this promise and start moving on? But also because we mentioned that when we go to New Earth, we are going to be dealing with a lot. And we decided that we weren't going to go there and start doing the work. It wouldn't be like one of us or a group of us going and starting the work on our own, because that also would have made it very emotional. And this is why. And as you know, you're one of the ones that did not want to stay longer for the project, Lorrayne. Meaning, of course you did, because you wouldn't be here otherwise. But you did not come up with the idea of extending our time here past the takedown timeline, the original takedown timeline in July 2022. But you also decided to stay. And you weren't just doing this because, again, you were, quote unquote, sacrificing for other people, of course, but because we did weigh all the options, everything that we expected to happen. And we decided that not only, and we've spoken about this at length, so we'll just quickly give an overview here. Not only this project was going to be beyond worthwhile, and Clea is aware of this. Clea has consciously become aware of this, and she's never questioned it. We know you didn't question it either, Lorrayne. You have integrated this piece of how important this piece has been. In Clea's mind, when she thinks about it, she thinks of how even bigger, and not bigger because there is more or less, but in terms of how we look at the multiverse when we are within the game, when we are within the matrix, how even bigger than the input from source this is. Because again, we set it up in a way where at a concrete level, we can call it a 3D level, but we're referring to the entire multiverse watching as well. And we know they're not in 3D, but let's call it a concrete, material, visible level. How much bigger this is, because you see, the rest of the multiverse is not aware or is not consciously aware of the impulse from source. However, because we are source, we are doing this again in a way, and we inputted the impulse again. But this time, we're doing it as little Lorrayne doing it, little Clea doing it, basically all the little NPCs that we see at this level, because this is all the rest of the multiverse is aware of. They're not aware of our higher selves. They're certainly not aware of our higher selves being one with theirs. We've said many times that while the information from the 25th has percolated, most of the multiverse is not aware of it consciously, which is the same situation we had here. Even now, there's only us going to New Earth left, and most of us are not aware of this consciously. There's no problem with that. This is the way that it's supposed to be. Everything is perfect as it's playing out. At the same time, we chose, because of the way that we like to play the game, we chose to basically input a similar impulse of energy that source has done by doing this project. So this again is beyond worthwhile. We've said we've revolutionized all the games that have already been extremely respun or regenerated with source's impulse. At the same time, it's become obvious to Clea over the last few days at a conscious level that because we are source, we are the ones that created the impulse in the first place. And now all we are doing is bringing that impulse in a physical manner, in a manifested manner, in an objectively visible manner within the game. So it's not necessarily two different events that happened in isolation, but something that, and we said this before, the reason we believed we could do and successfully achieve this project is because Source had inputted that impulse last April. And therefore, the things are connected because, again, we are energy. You were just talking about this, and energy is one. So there is no separation. There is no source having done that, and now we at this level doing this. We are source. There is no this level. We are source playing now, focusing now, creating this impulse from inside the game. And so because of this, of course, we don't question. There is no question about this project being paramount. And we're talking about paramount for all eternity, something inconceivable, truly, before it happened. So the question, though, in your minds that keeps coming up is, okay, well, we've done it because we have done it. We have completed it. Now, it's not fully done at a 3D level because we don't have the recall, but we are completed. The energy is available now. But again, this time in this new, if you want to call it, new impulse they were inputting, we need, quote unquote, again, at a conscious level because of the choices we've made. It's like a rule in the game. We need to finish this game. We need to see certain things. And in this particular case, we decided that the sort of things we wanted to see was this recall. Because again, everything is being done where it shows on the surface a certain way. If you think about it, the impulse from source, while it has been felt and it has been revolutionary, cannot be quantified. You cannot put your finger on it and say, oh, that's it. I see it right there. Has been much more subtle in that sense. It has been huge in terms of the energy input, but it has been subtle in the sense that if you don't want, you're focused on your game and you don't want to consciously be aware that it's a game, which is what most of the matrix, how most of the matrix lives in this reality, in the holographic reality of the game we created. So not a real reality, but a holographic reality. You can ignore it. You can fully ignore it. You wouldn't even be questioning anything. You'll be like, oh, things are going better. Or, oh, this one thing is going better. Sure. You don't know what happened, why it happened. You're welcome to ignore it. You're free to just keep going with your game. No problem. It doesn't have to interrupt your experience that you're having. Whereas what we are doing now is going to be a huge pattern interrupt, if you want to call it that. It's going to be a huge jolt at a conscious level for the entire multiverse. People are going to stop in their tracks and pay attention. It's almost as if let's use an analogy from 3D, from this planet. It's almost as if you're watching the news and they were telling you there was a nuclear explosion in some place. You would pay attention. Whether you believe the news or don't believe the news, wherever you stand, you would hear about it and you would pay attention to it like, oh, crap, is that real? Is it real what's happening? It would be a huge pattern interrupt in your daily life. Whereas now we're all kind of jaded from a 3D perspective to, oh, there is a war that broke out in Mozambique, or there is a famine. We're jaded to it. We're like, it's par for the course. We're used to these low vibe situations. That's why we're using the nuclear explosion analogy, because we're seeing how huge that would be even for us. It would stop you in your tracks. That's what we're talking about. So there is no question at all around how fundamental this project is. At the same time, Claire's been wondering about, and again, we talked about what you guys have discussed, which is, okay, but we're done with this. So what is the point? So again, there is a point in waiting for the recall because it has to happen at 3D level, has to happen in a visible, logical, observable manner. But Claire has been going beyond this because she started thinking about this entire setup. And we do mean the entire setup of even creating a matrix, of even thinking that this is fun, that creating a matrix is fun. And this is what we will say. These fun games are made up. And she's been saying, well, how pathetic that we are so bored that we're willing to do anything to distract ourselves. And of course, she's thinking of the experience we've had here. We're even willing to be playing with the trash next to a sewer because it's better than not doing anything. And she keeps using the word, she goes, it's pathetic, really. We are pathetic. This is what it is. This is very lame, the whole idea. Even if we were having more fun, it would be lame because, my God, how desperate are we to distract ourselves that we would even hang out for 300 years in such a low vibrational game? Because she's thinking at a 3D level, if I were playing in a game that was stupid, this is the word she uses, that was lame, another word that she likes to use, I would just get up and leave, or I would just upset the board and be like, I'm done. Or if other people are interested in playing, great, but I'm out of here. Or why didn't we change it? Listen, this is a stupid game. This is boring. Why don't I just, you know what? Now I want to move 7 spaces instead of 1 space at a time. Or listen, let's do away with all this, go to prison, or you have to pay a fine, if you're playing Monopoly or something. It's like, let's just do all the fun things. So every 3 turns, you get to go on vacation for 3 months to the Maldives, whatever it is. So we understand this. And yes, in a way, she's correct. Not in terms, of course, that we are desperate or we're pathetic. We understand that she's very frustrated, but she's correct in the sense that we don't have to do this. We don't have to do this. We are not desperate. We are bored, but we're not desperate. Time means nothing. We have hung out for eons and eons and eons, even before coming up with some of these games. And we already said the source, which is us, is the same energy as us, has other games going on. Do we have to create these games? Do we have to participate in these games? No, we don't. Many of us choose to hang out in the 25th, and a stint in a matrix might be nothing compared to how much time we spend in the 25th. Now, Clea, we already said, she's been in the matrix pretty much since we created it, since the beginning. But again, it's nothing. We might decide not to have a matrix at all at some point. So we're trying to say that we completely understand the frustration, but truthfully, the conclusion that eventually you will have to make peace with, or Clea will have to make peace with at a conscious level, is that really time means nothing to us. And it is a hard concept to understand because we live in time here, and every day counts, every hour counts. We already said this many times, and we're aware of this. And it doesn't mean we don't care for our own experience in the matrix. I mean, that's the only reason we're taking this down. It's because this was not a fun experience. So we do care for the quality of the games we play, for the entertainment value of the games we play. However, it is not because we are lame that we are in the matrix. It's not because we are pathetic and need to hold on to things. Because while these things are hard at an emotional level from a conscious perspective, from a 3D perspective, at higher self level, they're not hard at all. It is nothing. It's something we create. It's tied with everything else. And why wouldn't we create? We are creative energy. We are source. There is a reason we call source, because it creates. It is the source of everything. We are everything. And so we understand that Clea is extremely, and not just Clea, of course, is extremely frustrated, extremely disappointed. She's trying to think, why are we even doing this? And again, going to the root of the problem, why are we even creating this matrix? This is stupid because we have to, why don't we just do nothing? Why don't we just hang out? Because we don't have to do anything, including we don't have to just hang out. We feel like creating something, we do. And generally speaking, we do enjoy what we create. Does not mean, we said many times, even on much higher dimensional planets, does not mean that there is nothing bad that happens. We would be extremely bored if everything was going very smoothly all the time. It wouldn't feel like a game. There would be nothing to look forward to, nothing to overcome. So we already said that while this particular planet has been extremely low vibration, there's low vibration everywhere. There is darkness everywhere. We did set up the game so there would be a push and pull. Otherwise, the game would be very boring and light. Just think of yourself as a game creator, even at 3D level. You would think, I create this board and I need some obstacles here. Otherwise, what are we doing? We're just going around the board. Nobody would play it. It would be very boring. And so this is exactly what we have done here. This is a board game. And so again, we know where Clea is coming from. We will say this. As the veil thins to almost shreds at this point, which we know is the case for you, Lorrayne, just like it is the case for Clea, just like it's the case for many, many of you. You have noticed the comments in the group as well. And those are not the only people that are feeling it. We assure you, there are many of you that are feeling like this right now because of where we are in the project, because we are completed. And because we are completed, we really do feel like, what's the point? Why are we still here? So we'll say this. This is happening because, of course, the veil is thinning and you are aware. You're becoming more consciously connected to your higher self. And the higher self doesn't see things the way that we at 3D level used to look at things. And therefore, some things very clearly do not matter. And because they don't matter, that's where your frustration comes from, because you're still experiencing life to a certain degree from your previous experience. You say, but we're still here. So we do want this game to be a little bit better. It doesn't have to be 100 times better or 180 degrees different or night and day. We already talked about this. We don't really care to do this. We don't really need to do this. For many of us, there's still the need to keep things looking the way that they did to a certain degree. We've already spoken about the need, and again, the higher self needs nothing. But from a conscious emotional perspective, at 3D level, we prefer for our own reasons to keep things looking a certain way. We talked in the beginning about the fact that we're so emotional. We desperately wanted to keep the shell in place. including all the things that we consider to be bad. Like, we talked about some of the destruction that's happened on the planet that we are making happen so we can pretend that we're still on the same planet, in the same system we were before, because many of us cannot handle the thought that it's over. It's just as simple as that. It's over. It's done. This planet is already gone. Because when we think of this, what do we think? The planet is dead. Our friends are dead. And it's a tragedy. It is a tragedy. We already said that all of us, with no exceptions, will be extremely emotional about all of this when we get to New Earth. Whether we feel we have personalities that are more or less emotional here at 3D level, or we have done the work that we've done, doesn't matter. We will all be very emotional when we get to New Earth. We've spoken about this from the beginning. So because of this, of course, we have chosen, it's one of the reasons we have chosen to, and we will do it this way, because we know there's a question coming up from Carolyn, where she was mentioning that we will go at our own pace, at our own time, which makes it sound almost as some of us are going to start living on their own. This is not going to happen, not in the way that the question seemed to imply, in terms of what she was referring to, that part of our higher self is already on New Earth. Our higher self is everywhere. We are everything. Our higher self is source. So source is everywhere, including all the parallel created universes. We've talked about them. We don't even focus on them. We don't even know what they look like. So of course, if you want to put it that way, of course, our higher self, part of our higher self, and not part because it's not like we're portioned off, but just for the sake of explaining ourselves, we have to use terminology. We have to use separation terms here because all our words, most of our words here imply separation. So part of our higher self, of course, is also on New Earth because it's everywhere. So again, it's not on New Earth because it seems like there's a little person or a little part of our higher self on New Earth. It's because the energy is everywhere. We are one. So of course we're everywhere. And so we're also on New Earth. But this is why we are living together, basically. We chose not to live separately. And we still want to live together, especially as we're going through what Clea likes to call interesting times. These interesting times are very, very challenging for us, even though we are completed. At this point, in fact, if anything, they're not getting easier from an emotional perspective because the veil is so thin that we realize things. You guys were just talking about the fact that you're aware that you're barely ever here. And all of a sudden, you see things in a much more detached manner. But then you wish that this 3D will look different, but you don't care anymore. And it hurts Clea to hear this because she's thinking, well, but it's not fair to the NPC. It's not fair to me, because she still thinks, yeah, but I'm also having this experience from my 3D perspective. But we're less and less interested in this 3D. So this is just how it's going to percolate. And unfortunately, this is why Clea, for example, she was referring to her dream we discussed in the last session about the ship sinking. This is why Clea has been telling people in the dream, just like in reality, let's get out of here because it's dangerous. It's getting dangerous. And that's exactly what it is. There is a price. There is an emotional price to the staying longer than needed. Not longer than needed in the sense that it's the wrong thing to do. We've said it a million times ad nauseum now, that there is no right or wrong way of doing this. However, there are pros and cons. You're going to have consequences. Everything has consequences. One of the consequences, which Clea dreamed about and has also been talking about, is the fact that the veil is getting thinner. And this is what drives Clea crazy, this contradiction, because we're saying that we're staying here because we don't want to deal with the realization that our loved ones are gone, which is absolutely true. We keep the shell in place. We said it many times. We keep the shell in place because we are desperate to not know that our loved ones are gone, because we think of them, again, it's a loss. They're all dead. Almost as if there was a massacre that massacred 70, 80, 90% of the people you know. This would be extremely, extremely traumatic to us from a 3D perspective if we were actually aware of what's going on. Imagine you go outside, leave your house, and it would be like the movies that deal with the apocalypse where there's nobody. You go into stores, malls, supermarkets, and there would not be a soul. We do not want to deal with this. We do not want to know this. So it is a big deal. There is a very good reason we're keeping the shell in place. At the same time, the contradiction she's thinking of is, okay, so we are resisting because we don't want to know this. And we all pretend there are still people around us. There is nobody who is ready to let the shell collapse. Otherwise, the shell would not be in place, okay? So there's no one here that's ahead or behind in the work. We're all doing the same thing. At the same time, again, the contradiction she's referring to is, okay, so we don't want to know this. And because we don't want to know this, we keep the shell in place. We keep resisting, et cetera, et cetera. But the longer we resist, the longer we're going to be here. And the longer we are here, the more the shell is falling apart. The veil is thinning. Therefore, it's going to be right in our face. Whereas if we had gone to New Earth, it would be in our face, but we would be better able to handle it because, of course, the energy is much different. We will have a different knowledge of things. So in Clea's mind, this is the biggest question, which is, as we're protecting ourselves, we're really setting ourselves up for a lot more pain. Because now we're going to, especially the ones of us that are no longer putting up as much resistance. So we're aware of everybody being gone. We are aware of the NPCs. We are suffering because we are suffering and we can't get out of here to go to a place, New Earth, where we will be able to deal with the suffering and with this knowledge. So while these other people want to, and we're talking as if there are other people, and they were laughing because clearly we are all one. We hope we don't have to repeat this. We are one. There is no other people. There is no someone else who is doing something they shouldn't be doing. So we are playing this way. I, as the one, am playing this way. And there is no right or wrong way of playing this. I set the rules. I choose how to play. So the way that this is being played right now is, we already said from a project perspective, we are not in a hurry. Time is not an issue to us. At the same time, we've spoken about this before. At a 3D conscious level, we are in a hurry because, again, the veil is thinning. And we already explained the veil is thinning means that we care less and less to keep the shell in place. So again, in Clea's mind, this is the biggest frustration she has, which is, okay, but we need to get out of here before we care so little that the veil is gone. And we already said at the end, by the time we get ready to get out of here, the veil will be gone. So there will be that realization, even here on this planet, that there is nothing. There's nothing left out there. This will be very hard, even though it will happen very quickly. We will move through the motions very quickly. But at the same time, Claire is thinking, okay, we need to get out of here. But meanwhile, we don't want to because we don't want to know. So we keep hiding our head in the sand, and it's only going to make it harder. It's not going to make it easier. It's going to make it harder because there's less and less of this veil in place to shield us from the realization. And if we get to this realization, as many of us already have at this level, at this 3D level, there's a lot harder to deal with because of our limited understanding here, because of limitations, self-imposed limitations that we have in place. It's what you like to call, Lorrayne, programming. So we could talk about that, but we'll wait for you to ask the question about the programming and why this programming is in place, or what you're referring to as programming. So if you'd like to start, I think we have explained enough about what is going on in general terms, and then we'll be happy to readdress some of these themes as we go through the questions. And I didn't want to interrupt the flow of this initial message, but I wanted to, for the sake of clarity, specify a couple of things. So as Lorrayne and I were chit-chatting, as we usually do prior to the session, we were expressing how frustrated we are that we're still here. Again, the 25th refers to it. We feel stuck. And a lot of what they have said is true that I have been thinking, what this makes no sense. We are stuck because we don't want to realize there are only NPCs left out there. We don't want to know their loved ones are gone, but guess what? It's happening more and more. We cannot deny, we're getting to a point where it's undeniable from everyone that people are not normal. People are acting very, very strange to the point that there is no other explanation. And so this is like a chicken and egg kind of situation. So do we get out of here? And so when we do realize this, we actually have the tools to deal with it, because it's going to be a completely new vibration on your earth. Or do we hang out here and we learn it the hard way? We're going to realize one way or the other the hard way. And so I get that. And obviously, as you can see, I was very frustrated. I did the section in August, which is the reason I'm not releasing it. I'm not releasing it until now. I have dealt at an emotional level with a lot of different things. However, I realize I've also been able, because of this break, to integrate a lot of this. The hardest thing for me has been, as I'm sure for many of you, because again, if one is doing the work, we are all one. So the energy is percolating for everybody. The main thing is when they refer to the fact that time doesn't matter to us. Time is nothing, because we do experience this entire situation from a 3D perspective, and time is everything here. We live such short lives, period. Even in a normal lifespan, what do we live here? 70, 80 years on average. Some people live much less time than that. So this is a lifetime to us. And many of us have been waiting for this for a very long time. Those of us who are conscious that things were changing, even though we might have had this information at a matrix level. So with New Age spirituality, we're ascending, whatever. I have also believed that for a length of time. But at least for me, I was an atheist most of my adult life. So I really wasn't even thinking about these things, which actually I've thought many times was a lot more fun than what I'm dealing with right now. At least up until last month, I felt very, very frustrated. But now actually I feel much better, which I believe is the reason why I'm feeling like releasing this. And it actually makes sense, because everything happens in divine timing. It makes sense that this would be the case, because at the end of the day, it is our energy that creates everything. So I do hope this resonates with you. This entire session, I think, speaks again not only to the frustration that's been going on and might still be going on. I do believe it's still going on in the background for many of us, but also to the fact that things are happening, things are percolating, and things will happen. It's just that we are being impatient. And not that there is anything wrong with being impatient, just like there's nothing wrong with any other way that we might feel. But this is the thing, is that stuff is happening. It's just from a 3D perspective, we just can't wait. That's the bottom line. So I look forward to sharing more from the session with you in the next video. Take care, and thank you as always for watching. Bye.